One of the things that you mentioned is the importance of transparency in the budget, and rules that I mean the current budget is not noted for its transparency. How could we improve just the presentation of the budget?
Well, I think we budget analysts are at fault. I always think we need to look at our own house as well in terms of they're wrong. One thing I've been pushing for a long time, and I thought I almost had convinced some people at IMF, but not quite, was that the presentation of the growth in the budget should not be off of what is newly legislated only, but in fact, it primarily should also include what growth occurs everywhere, mainly in spending, but also in tax subsidies. If you did that and you reported on that way and you distributed it, you would see things like that. For instance, in President Trump's first 2 years of his last term before COVID started hitting, over 100% of the growth in spending went for Social Security and healthcare, and everything else actually went negative. I'm talking about real growth now, not even the share of GDP. I think that type of presentation, if that's an upfront presentation by CBO or OMB or whatever, I think people would react. They say, wait a second, what happened to the working class? Why did we get left out? So, the distributional effects of what we're getting with this sort of non-transparent budget is not very good. I don't think it's anything anybody would vote for. I don't think any member of Congress would vote for what we've got now, because
And,
it
and
doesn't make sense.
and would it be possible to do that on a prospective basis? I mean, showing what a presidential budget would look like on that basis?
Yes, yes, yes. And one of my proposals has been that is how CBO should upfront present the president's budget. The president presents a budget. The president's budget has a set of numbers for what the future of spending will be for the next 5 or 10 years, depending on what they're willing to show. And that presentation basically is oriented around what the legislation is going to change. But you could show the change, the increase in spending based on what we do for appropriations, essentially, which is relative to past current levels. We really do that with the discretionary side of the budget. We measure the growth of the discretionary budget. In fact, we measure it in nominal terms, not even real terms, by what increase is there over last year. And I'm saying now put the entire presentation of the budget. It's dodging the issue of what's done legislative. We can show that too. But what share of the growth in the budget comes about in total? And then I break into two parts: how much is newly legislated and how much is due to these zombies, if you want to, from
Yeah.
which would actually show how little control the legislators have. The earlier book that covered this in a little more detail, but hasn't been updated, that I called Dead Men Ruling, was trying to make an appeal to the members of Congress that they recognize how little control they had, whether they wanted to cut taxes more or they wanted to increase spending more, how little they were actually doing relative to what had already been built in. It's not that the American public's losing out in terms of getting a badly allocated budget. They're losing out in terms of their own control over what we do as a nation. And I'll
We
stretch
could have a,
a
go
step
ahead.
further. I think our cultural wars are largely the fact that Congress can't do its job with spending and taxes, which is its main job, that and regulation. And so they're getting into these cultural wars, which are basically just mainly just a sideshow.
We could have a scorecard, a scoreboard that said, like zombies, 2 trillion, Congress, nothing, or something like that, and see if they can change that somehow.